Hi, today we're gonna work on our next stitch. So if you were following along in our first video, we learned a single crochet stitch, which looked like this, and we made our first square. Today we're gonna do a new stitch, which is called the slip stitch. A lot of people learn this one first, actually, but I think the single crochet is much more useful. Slip stitch is often used just as a joining stitch. So when you need to hook two parts of a piece together, you might use a slip stitch. It's not very often used as just a regular crochet stitch, but in this piece I am. So I'm going to teach you how to do a crochet stitch, and then I'll teach you how to make this block. It's going to be our next block, and it uses a combination of slip stitch and single crochet. And when you do the slip stitch, it's going to have to be really important to watch your tension. By that I mean not holding the yarn too tightly, because that is going to impact how it looks. So let's get started. Again, I've got a size H crochet hook and just a regular acrylic yarn, nothing fancy. So I'm going to make my slip knot, insert my hook, and I'm going to start just the same. I'm going to start with some chains. So remember, chain, yarn over and pull through the loop. Now, I'm not going to make this a whole square size, just so you can get the idea. And then I'm going to start with a row of single crochet, just to make it easier to see what's going on. So I'm just going to skip my first chain, because that counts as a crochet. And then I'm going to do single crochets across, just to get a starting row that we can work with, and that you'll kind of recognize as something you've done before. So for single crochet, we insert our hook into the next stitch, yarn over, pull a loop through the stitch, then yarn over and pull through both the loops. Hopefully you've had enough practice on that in the past week or so. Alright, so now I have a row of single crochet, and remember when we turned for a single crochet row, we did one chain and then we turned the work over like that? For a slip stitch, you don't have to do the turning chain. You can still do one if it makes it easier for you, but it will leave kind of a bump along the ridge of your work, so it's really preference. I'm not going to chain this time. And I also usually don't count this loop as my first stitch. So for a slip stitch, you start the same way. You insert your hook in the next stitch, you go through both loops of the hook of the stitch, yarn over, and now when I pull through this stitch, I'm also going to pull through the other loop on my hook. So I'm going to pull through the stitch and the loop on my hook. That is one slip stitch. Now I'll do another one. So I'm going to insert through both loops of that stitch, yarn over, pull through, and pull through the loop that was on my hook. Insert in the stitch, yarn over, pull through the stitch and your loop. And this is where the tension is important. If you make it really tight, it's going to be really hard to get through this slip stitch later. Insert in the stitch, yarn over, pull through both. Insert through the stitch, yarn over, and pull through both. So it's a pretty simple stitch. It's arguably the easiest of all the crochet stitches. And now I'm going to switch back to single crochet. So I'm going to chain one to count as my first stitch. Now here's where it can get a little bit tricky if you're working with slip stitch. It looks like I have two stitches. Which one am I working through? I've got a V on this side and I've got a V on this side. So what happened when I did the slip stitch is it pushed the top of my other row, of my single crochet row, it pushed the tops of them over to the side. So this row here was my slip stitches. So I'm going to make sure I work through these stitches on my way back. So not these ones over here. Those were my slip stitch, or my single crochets. These ones over here were my slip stitches. So my chain counted as my first stitch, so I'm going to work in this next one. I'm gonna knot in here, insert my hook through both stitches, both parts of the stitch, yarn over, pull through, and since I'm doing a single crochet, then I'm gonna yarn over again and pull through both. Insert my hook, yarn over, and pull through both. So I'm gonna do the single crochet row all the way across. And now if you made those slip stitches too tight, then you're going to find yourself really trying to have to force your way into the stitch. So you might have to undo it and practice getting that tension just right. Because if it's too tight, this is going to be really challenging. So that's one of the reasons I like this as kind of a beginner exercise, because it makes you really work on your tension early. Tension is kind of a hallmark for experienced crocheters. They have really great even tension. You can always tell that they've had a lot of practice. Their stitches are really even. So now you can see that I've got this ridge that kind of pops out. Again, that's where that top of that single crochet row got pushed over by the slip stitches. On the back, I don't see that because I worked into my slip stitches from the previous row. So for our block for our blanket this week, what I want you to do, and I'll keep showing you the example, but we're going to make this. And so now you can understand how this happened. This, I started with a row of single crochet, and then I came back and I did slip stitches, and that pushed my tops of my single crochets to the side, so it makes this really cool texture. And then I went back to single crochet. So this pattern is done by a single crochet, then slip stitches, then 3 rows of single crochet, a row of slip stitches, 3 rows of single crochet, a row of slip stitches, on and on until you get all the way to 6 inches. So, and it doesn't really matter what row you ended on, but I think it's nicer to end it on a single crochet row than a slip stitch row, but really whenever you get to 6 inches, you're done. Another note just on sizing, mine ended up actually a little bit smaller than my other one, but it's going to be okay. So I should have done it like another stitch wider, but it is close enough. It doesn't have to be perfect. When we join it together, it'll be fine. So I will keep working on this just until we get a few repeats, just so you can see. So I've done my row of single crochet, my row of slip stitch, and 1 more row of single crochet. Then I will chain 1 because I need 3 rows of single crochet. So that was my first row. And I'm going to do another row of single crochet. And then 1 more row of single crochet. Because I want those ridges to be on the same side, I'm going to do an odd number of single crochet rows. If I wanted those ridges to be on opposite sides, so it's kind of a reversible pattern, then I could do 2 rows of single crochet and then the slip stitch. But I'm choosing to put the ridges always on the same side. So I'm going to do 3 rows of single crochet. Now this is my slip stitch row again, so I'm going to turn without doing an extra chain. I'm going to insert my hook in that stitch, pull through and pull through my loop on my hook. So yarn over, pull through my stitch and my loop. Yarn over, pull through my stitch and my loop. All the way across. And then I would go back to single crochet. So I'd chain 1 and then not in this front row because that was the tops of my single crochets, but in this back row, those are my slip stitches. Made that one a little tight, that was hard to get into. Okay, so that is our little pattern. slip stitch or single crochet, slip stitch, 3 rows of single crochet, slip stitch, and you keep on going. 3, 1, 3, 1, 3, 1. Remember to make your square, if you're doing the blanket, the same size as your other square or as close as you can. I'm doing mine 6 inches by 6 inches, so that takes me 25 to 27 chain or single crochet. So experiment, see what it needs for you, and I look forward to seeing your projects. Happy crocheting! And don't forget to subscribe, you'll see all the latest videos. And that's it. Have a great day.